Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 4 of camp. We're over halfway done, which is super exciting. I'm very proud of how hard all of you have been working too. I'm really impressed that you're getting on every week, doing your lessons. It's really great, and I'm glad to see you participating. So today we're going to do something that's probably a little bit more fun than what we've been doing. We're going to be listening to a story that someone will read to us online. And then after, we're going to fill out kind of like a follow along chart that goes with it. So before we get to that, I want to review what we did last week, which was try to remember. I want you to take a guess of what we did. Say it out loud. So we worked on comparing and contrasting, if you remember, with Bunny and Crow. And when we compare and contrast, we talk about what's alike and what's different between two or more things. So we talked about where they live, what they do, and then at the end, I asked you to compare and contrast a cat and a dog. So the responses that I did get were very good. We talked about how a cat makes the noise of meow and a dog makes the noise of barking or woof. So very nice job on that. Everyone's on track so far, which is great. Today, what we're going to be talking about is problem and solution. So we're going to be looking at a challenge that a character faces or something that doesn't go right. And then we're seeing how they solve that problem or how they make the best out of the situation and try to change what happens or the outcome of the event. So before we start with our story, I want you to think of a problem that you've had recently or something that was hard that you had to figure out how to get it done. And I want you to say that out loud once you have one. Okay, so now that you have your problem, I want you to think about a solution, which is how you fixed the problem, what you did to make it better. And you may have actually done this, you may have just thought of this solution, hadn't thought of it before, but I want you to say out loud how you would fix that problem. Okay, so one example that I can give that also applies to our lessons and what we've been doing. Say your problem is that you didn't get your resource bag for this week and you don't know what to do, you're kind of stuck, you don't know how you're still going to participate in the lesson. Possible solution to that. Can anyone give me one? If you have one, I want you to say it out loud. So for me, if I were in your position, I didn't have my resource bag, I think a solution for me would be whatever worksheet we're using or a chart, I would draw it myself on a blank piece of paper. So if you have a pencil and a piece of paper, that's all you would need. That's how you would fix your problem. So that's just one example. There's many problems and solutions that we're going to talk about in our story today. But before we get started, I want you to get out this chart that you should have in your resource bag. And if you don't have your resource bag, think about the solution that I just gave you. You can pause the video right here and you can copy down this chart that I have drawn. Because I just drew this one myself too, I didn't get it from anywhere. So, like I said, we're talking about problems and solutions. So our problem is what goes wrong, and the solution is how we fix it. And in the story we're reading, No More Noisy Nights, there's one big problem, one big solution. But while the character's trying to solve that big problem, there's 3 smaller problems they're having that I want you to figure out. And that's what we have on our chart here. We have our main problem, and then we have problem 1, 2, and 3 that are smaller problems. So I want you to be looking at those and figuring out how we could solve those as well. So we're going to get started on our story. It's about, I believe, 5 minutes long, so try to stay with us here. I really like it, so it should be interesting to you too. Okay, here we go.
Hey, welcome to Storyline Online, brought to you by the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. I'm Tony Hale, and today I'm going to be reading No More Noisy Nights, written by Holly L. Niner and illustrated by Guy Wallach. All right, let's get started. Jackson worked hard all day moving into his new house. After dinner, he relaxed, and at 9 o'clock, he climbed into bed. That's when he heard. Oh dear, Jackson said. There must be a ghost in the attic.
So right there, we're already seeing a possible problem, so keep that in mind.
Hope this noise stops soon, but it didn't. So Jackson stuffed his ears with cotton balls and tried to sleep. The next morning, Jackson was so tired, he poured orange juice on his cereal and ketchup on his toast. After breakfast, Jackson peeked into the attic. I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Ghost, but could you please stop oohing all night? I would like to sleep. Oh, I'm sorry, said the ghost, but what else can I do? Let me think about that, said Jackson.
So here Jackson's trying to solve our problem. Pay attention and see if you can figure out what his solution was to it.
Jackson thought about it all day while he unpacked. After dinner, he put a box on the attic floor. Then he relaxed in his favorite chair, and at 9 o'clock, Jackson climbed into bed. That's when he heard, "Buggity, wuggity, 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 woo!" Oh dear, Jackson said. There must be a boogie monster in the basement. Oh.
There's our small problem number 2. So first one, we had the ghost. Second is our problem we're talking about now.
Hope this noise stops soon. But it didn't. So he stuffed his ears with cotton balls, pulled on his thickest ski cap, and tried to sleep. The next morning, Jackson was so tired he could barely open his eyes to pick out his clothes. After breakfast, Jackson tiptoed down the stairs. Sorry to disturb you, Mr. Monster, but could you please stop boogity-woogity wooing all night? I need to sleep. Boogity-woogity whoop, said the boogie monster, but what else can I do? Well, let me think about that, said Jackson. Jackson thought about it all day while he unpacked. After dinner, he left a box at the bottom of the basement stairs. Then he relaxed in his favorite chair, and at 9 o'clock, he climbed into bed. That's when he heard, plink, plink, plonk, plink, plonk, blink, plonk. Oh dear, said Jackson, there must be a pixie in the piano. I hope this noise stops soon, but it didn't. So he stuffed his ears with cotton balls, pulled on his thickest ski cap, wrapped his pillow around his head, and tried to sleep. The next morning, Jackson was so tired, he washed his face with toothpaste and brushed his teeth with soap. After breakfast, Jackson peeked into the piano. Sorry to disturb you, Miss Pixie, but could you please stop plink-plunking all night? I really need to sleep. Plink-plunk, pardon me, said the piano pixie. But what else can I do? Let me think about that, said Jackson. Jackson thought about it all day while he unpacked.
So here we see him trying to solve the problem and come up with a solution. So the solution wasn't when he's putting the cotton balls in his ears and putting things over his ears to block the sound. We're about to hear our solution now. It's when there's no longer a problem, he has it figured out.
After dinner, he put some sheet music on the piano, but he was too tired to relax in his favorite chair, so Jackson climbed straight into bed. That's when he just barely heard the gentle thump of puzzle pieces, the quiet chugga-chugga of a toy train, and the soothing sounds of a pixie lullaby. Jackson sighed, he closed his eyes, and he finally fell asleep in his new house with his not so noisy new friends. The end. Now, why I chose this book is, guys, I was kind of that kid that was afraid of the dark. And what I so appreciate about Jackson is he faced his fears with courage and he had a solution. And if there's something that you're kind of afraid of, you know what? Things aren't always what they seem. So thanks for watching Storyline Online. Make sure you check out.
Alrighty. So I hope you enjoyed that story. I liked it a lot. I thought it was really interesting how he came up with all the different solutions on his own, and then I don't want to give away the big solution yet. I want you to help me figure it out. But we're going to work through our chart together. And as I fill mine out, I'll show you my answers so you can follow along. But first, I want you to say out loud, and then we'll write it together. What was the big problem in the story? It's called No More Noisy Nights. That gives you a hint. What's the big problem? So the big problem is that it is too noisy to sleep. So if you need help with spelling or anything, right here, it is too noisy to sleep. Okay. You can pause that if you need more time as we're going through this. Don't feel like you have to keep up with us. Okay, so it's too noisy to sleep. We're going to come back to that solution because that's kind of a big solution to the whole story. So we know it's too noisy. What's one example of a problem? And when Jackson realized it was noisy, what happened first? If anyone remembers. There was something in the attic. And say the answer out loud if you know it. So small problem number 1 is there is a ghost in the attic. And here's your spelling for that. That was the first one back at the beginning of the story. First thing he hears at night. And then, does anyone remember the second noise that he heard the next night when he couldn't sleep? Because that's our next problem that he had. Something in the basement. It starts with a B, if anyone can guess it. There is a boogie monster in the basement. Spelling and our answer. There's a boogie monster in the basement. Okay. And then everyone should remember our last one because we saw that recently. That was the last one in the story. What was the last noise that Jackson heard at night? Third night that he couldn't sleep. I want you to say it out loud if you know it. So there is a pixie in the piano. There you go. That was the last thing that he heard that was keeping him up at night. And I want to add that it's totally fine if you're not getting all of these while we're going through. This is just me introducing you to the idea of problem and solution. So it's like if you were in the classroom, something that you'd be doing together with your teacher. So I don't expect you to know all the answers. Don't worry if you don't. That's why we're going through it together. So now that you have all your problems, we're going to start thinking about the solutions and try to solve these problems. And we're going to look at small problem number 1 first, which is there's a ghost in the attic. How does Jackson go about solving that? He hears the ghost, and then I had mentioned earlier while we were reading the story, he's putting cotton balls in his ears, putting things over his head. That's not solving the noise, that's just blocking it out. What does he do to fix the noise so that he doesn't hear it anymore? He put something in the attic, and then we see at the end the ghost is playing with what he put in the attic, which is keeping him quiet. What was that? Okay, so if you don't remember, he put a puzzle in the attic for the ghost. So a puzzle is put in the attic for the ghost, which I thought was a pretty creative idea because I don't know how I would keep a ghost quiet. I don't know if you do, but this right here is what Jackson comes up with. Okay, and then pause that if you don't have it done yet. Small problem number 2. How did we solve the problem of the boogie monster in the basement? What did he do? Same thing. It wasn't the cotton balls, wasn't something on his head. He comes up with an actual solution that we see at the end when the boogie monster is playing with something. Try to take a guess of if you remember what it was. So a train set is left on the steps. So he left a train set on the steps that we see the boogie monster playing with at the end. So that's how he kept him busy and kept him quiet in the end. And then small problem number 3. This was our last one. There's a pixie in the piano. So how was that problem solved? And try to guess. Give me a guess out loud if you know. So our answer is piano, sheet, music is left in the piano. So he left that music there for the pixie, keep her busy, and to keep the noise down. Okay, so although I didn't expect you to come up with those on your own, I hope that you were able to follow along because you should be able to identify some problems and solutions on your own, and then with a little bit of help from your teacher, especially if you're in first grade, you start figuring those out on your own a little bit more. Kindergarten, not so much. So if you needed my help for all of them, no worries. Last thing, what I'm going to ask you to do for your question is I want you to tell me the big solution, which would go right here. That's what I want to see in the comments. And I'm going to walk you through how to figure that out so you're not all on your own. But we see at the end the big solution. And if you want to go back in my video and rewatch that part to figure out the answer, you're more than welcome to do that. But there's kind of a common idea here. When we see all these solutions, he's putting things there for the ghost, the boogie monster, and the pixie. It's kind of like, I don't want to give the answer away, but he's trying to help them, being very nice to them. What is he trying to do with these creatures to get them like on his side, get them to be quiet during the night? What does he do to fix his big problem of it being too noisy? That's what I want you to answer in the comments. And if you're not completely sure, go back and watch it. If you're still not sure, I just want you to give me a guess, because then once I get your answer, I can see what we still need to work on with problem and solution. But I appreciate everyone participating today. Thank you for following along with my lesson. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. See you later.